I'm deeply engaged in Twitter as a platform. And so I look at it historically as one of the biggest missed opportunities in the history of Silicon Valley. That if you think about it, Twitter is an incredibly elegant product idea. And in the early days, it was really easy to imagine it playing a huge and very positive role in our public discourse. It was also pretty easy to imagine that if you did that, you'd have an incredibly valuable business. So they managed to make a product whose impact on our national conversation has been almost entirely negative, and which is embarrassingly unvaluable in comparison to the impact that it has on the national conversation. You know, you would think that something that was that important to politics, that important to journalism, that important to celebrity would be immensely valuable. And don't get me wrong, it's worth billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars. So it is a valuable company. But when it got started, it wasn't crazy to imagine that it could be as valuable as Facebook. And I think with a better management team, it would have been, and a better board of directors. This whole thing with Elon Musk is of a piece with the history of this company, which is snatching a disaster out of almost every great opportunity available to the company. And, you know, there should be a war crimes trial for the board of directors for the people that they've picked, and the way they've handled the whole thing with Elon is just completely incomprehensible to me. And I do not know what's going to happen here, because, you know, it might be that the best thing for everybody would be for the deal to break and for everybody to sue Elon for tens of billions of dollars for the next 20 years. That might be the happiest ending for everybody. But we're in a bad place in Silicon Valley. You know, the culture of the Valley does not honor or respect the people touched by its products. And you see this all over the place. You know, you have Robinhood in stock trading, which, you know, the entire business model is based on exploiting the relative ignorance of retail investors. You have Uber and Lyft that exploit the drivers, right? You had WeWork, which, you know, I mean, just they have all these insane business plans. You have AI, which is profiting from the amplification of bias. And, you know, none of that is necessary. What the industry needs is an FDA. It needs somebody who sits there and says, look, as a condition of market access, you have to prove your product is safe and it works. I think that would do wonders, because there's nothing about AI that can't be great. There's nothing about self-driving cars. We could do self-driving cars today. We just need to give them their own lanes. We need to put beacons on anything that they could run into, right? That's what we do with ships. That's what we do with airplanes. It's totally doable. But it does require investment. It would reduce the rate of return to the guys making the cars, so they don't do it. And there's nobody telling them otherwise. We need to have people who say, hey, I'm sorry, you can't do crypto if it's insecure and people can't get their money back, right? You know, I mean, there's like really basic good housekeeping rules that this industry doesn't do. The second thing we need to do is we need to look at the laws related to data. Because at the end of the day, this notion that data is an asset and that any corporation that touches that asset can claim ownership to it, there's something fundamentally wrong with that. Because if you use behavioral economics, which is this notion that human decision-making has not evolved much since the days of the caveman, so it's very primitive, easy to exploit if you have enough data. If you know enough about the population and you know enough about each individual person, you can not just predict people's behavior, you can use the app that you've created and the recommendation engines you have to steer their behavior in ways that are attractive to you. Well, you know, that results in things like the January 6th insurrection, where thousands of people who I guess 2 years earlier would have never imagined themselves attacking police officers, much less the Capitol, were manipulated into doing that. And, you know, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on right now. And it's not just on internet platforms. It's spread into every, you know, you can't do anything these days without giving people data. because they perceive that data is the new oil. And somewhere we have to have a set of rules that protect people from being abused. And then lastly, the third thing we need is we need to look at tech in the context of the whole economy and ask, have we learned anything from allowing every industry in the economy to become monopolized? Well, we've learned a bunch of things. It makes investors a ton of money, but it hurts literally everyone else. And the question is, are we always going to make our national policy around the interests of active investors? Or are we going to have some portion of our policy be directed toward the needs of the vast majority of the people who don't? And that's the question. I don't know the answer to that.